You've tuned in to the unavailing frequency. But don't touch that dial. We've got you right where we want you.
This is Welcome to Harrow, the town that isn't supposed to exist. Account number 9, The Merge. If you're still driving on Interstate 80 at night, you're playing Russian roulette with a fully loaded cylinder. The inspector from the 8th account tried to warn us. He said the black asphalt was heading for the interstate. He was right, and they made it. I was a Nebraska State Patrol trooper. I say was because I turned in my badge 48 hours ago. I am not equipped to fight this, and frankly, neither is the United States military. You can't shoot an enemy that isn't technically alive, and you can't bomb a town that isn't on any topographical map. It happened 3 nights ago. I was working the graveyard shift, patrolling a long, empty stretch of I-80 near the Dawson County line. At 2:45 a.m., my radio cracked with a frantic dispatch call. Multiple 911 calls were dropping simultaneously from mile marker 242. People were screaming about a massive pileup, dead engines, people walking on the highway. Then every single call went to dead static. I flipped my lights and my sirens on and tore down the eastbound lane 120 miles an hour. As I approached mile marker 240, my cruiser's engine sputtered. The digital dashboard flickered violently. A sharp smell of ozone filled the cabin. I slammed on the brakes, throwing the cruiser onto the grassy median just as the engine died completely. The headlights shut off, plunging me into darkness. I sat there for a second, my heart hammering against my ribs. The radio was dead. My cell phone was a black brick. I popped the truck manually, grabbed my AR-15 patrol rifle, clicked my heavy flashlight on, and started walking down the median toward mile marker 242. What I saw when I crested the hill on that highway, it'll haunt me till the day I die. The interstate didn't look like an interstate anymore. About a half-mile stretch of the concrete highway had been utterly consumed. It was replaced by that flawless room-temperature, jet-black asphalt. It had spread across all 4 lanes, bleeding over the rumble strips and onto the grass like a cancerous oil spill. Stranded on that black stretch were about 20 vehicles, semi-trucks, minivans, sedans. Every single one of them was dead. And walking among the dead cars were the people of Harrow. Hundreds of them. The pale, bruised yellow streetlights had sprouted up right through the median, illuminating the highway in that sickening, archival glow. The silence was absolute, heavy enough to make my eardrums throb. I stayed low to the tall grass, peering through the optics of my rifle. They were conducting something, I don't know what it was, a mass harvest? They weren't bothering with the diner simulations anymore, the fake police routines. They didn't need to lure anyone off the highway because the highway, it belongs to them now. I watched a family in a stranded SUV. The doors were locked. The father was frantically hitting the steering wheel. A group of 5 Harrow entities, 3 men in business suits, 2 women in floral dresses. They completely surrounded the car. They didn't break the glass. They simply clamped their smooth, flawless hands onto the door frames and pulled. The metal groaned and tore like wet cardboard. They ripped off the doors completely from their hinges, tossed them into the perfect asphalt. The screams of the family were instantly swallowed by the dead air. The entities reached in, their arms moving with brutal mechanical efficiency, and they dragged the family out onto the street. From the shadows of the yellow streetlight, the naked, featureless silicone dummies emerged. There were dozens of them, gliding forward to meet the terrified victims. I watched through my scope as they began the replication process on a mass scale. The entities held the screaming civilians down, while the dummies pressed their hands against the victims' faces, measuring, extruding, morphing. I couldn't just watch. I am sworn to protect. I aimed my rifle at the nearest entity. A man in a suit holding down the father, and I pulled the trigger. Crack! The gunshot was deafening, a violent rupture in the absolute silence of the black asphalt. The .556 round hit the entity square in the temple. Its head snapped to the side, a chunk of smooth plastic-like skull shattering into the air. There was no blood, just a burst of gray dust and spark. The entity didn't fall, it simply froze, its head tilted at a broken angle. Then all of a sudden, all of them stopped. Hundreds of heads swiveled in perfect, terrifying unison, locking onto my position in the grass. An armed variant has entered the perimeter. A single synchronized voice echoed from hundreds of mouths. It sounded like a massive metallic choir. The variable is hostile. Neutralize the threat. They dropped their victims. The entire crowd turned and began to march toward me. They weren't gliding anymore, just like the DOT inspector had said. They were upgrading. They were walking, stiff, heavy marching steps. Their boots hitting the asphalt in perfect time. Thud, thud, thud. I fired again, dropping a woman in a dress with a center mass shot. But two more entities instantly stepped over her glitching, thrashing body. I realized then with absolute certainty that if I stayed, I was going to be measured. I was going to be replicated, and the thing that walked out would not be me anymore. I slung my rifle over my shoulder and ran. I ran back toward my dead cruiser, praying that the EMP field hadn't expanded while I was watching. As I sprinted, the ground beneath my feet began to vibrate. I looked over my shoulder. The massive black paving machine the inspector had described was now rolling down the center of the interstate. It was moving faster now. Behind it, the perfect black asphalt was expanding, eating the concrete highway, chasing me down the median. I reached my cruiser, grabbing the keys, and kept running. I didn't stop until my lungs were bleeding. I hit the county overpass 3 miles down the road. I flagged down a long-haul trucker, an older rig, and I told him the highway was collapsed. It was gone. By the time I got back to the precinct and convinced my captain to send a heavily armed convoy to mile marker 242, the sun was already coming up. We arrived at the coordinates, but something was different. There was nothing there. The black asphalt was gone. The yellow streetlights were gone. The stranded cars, all gone. The highway was just standard cracked concrete, baking in the early morning sun. My captain looked at me like I was insane. He asked me to take a breathalyzer test. But damn it, I know what I saw. Harrow isn't tied to a specific physical location anymore. This town is a program, and that black asphalt, it's the code. They can deploy it over the interstate, snatch 20 cars at a time, format the victims, and then retract the town into whatever dimension it hides in before the sun comes back up. Do not drive cross-country at night. If your GPS glitches, if your car stalls, if the road suddenly gets too smooth, leave your car and run. Run into the dirt, because the diorama is open for business. And it has a new exhibit now. And that new exhibit is us.